In this 25th anniversary year of September 11th, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation continues to honor America's heroes. Heroes like Fire Lieutenant Michael Wells, who was inspired by 9/11 to serve his community. After 14 dedicated years of service, he lost his battle with occupational cancer, leaving behind his wife, Katie, and their 3 children. Tunnel to Towers honored Lieutenant Wells by paying off the family's mortgage in recognition of his sacrifices. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org.
He's at war with woke.
Joe Concha
thinks liberals are a joke.
Joe Concha.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
All right. Going you two, aren't we? You want to feel really, really old? I love doing this. This came out in, I don't know, 1983? Maybe? Sunday Bloody Sunday? 82 maybe? Wow. So if you want to do the math on that, we are looking at 44 years ago. This song that doesn't sound like it came out nearly a half a century ago is now that old now at this point. The great Bono. I get that he's political, and some of you don't like him as a result. But you know what? Between Hollywood and almost every artist who isn't country, you got to deal with it and just be like, all right, I'll just embrace the music and forget all about the other stuff. Anyway, this is Concha at Night. Thanks so much for tuning in on, again, boy, when you have a radio show during the Trump era 2.0, the rundown writes itself, as they say. And here we have Trey Yingst, my colleague over at Fox News, talking about this rescue was really insane and incredible and amazing. And every type of positive adjective you can throw at it. Here we had an F-15 shot down when we thought that Iran didn't have the capability to do that, but they did. And right out of Top Gun Maverick, the pilots ejected, landed in enemy soil, and one was rescued fairly quickly. The other one had to go 7,000 feet up a mountain and hide there until his beacon could be located. We send in several, as in more than 100, special forces to extradite this wounded soldier out. Apparently, couldn't really even walk that well, but yet his training, almost like muscle memory, took over. And we were able to get him out without any U.S. casualties whatsoever, the president calling it the greatest rescue mission in U.S. military history. Anyway, while all this was going on, because we could walk and chew gum, as they say, here we have Trey Yingst talking about how the IRGC, that's the Republican Guard, that's basically the people, it's military, obviously, that's running the Iranian government at this point. The last backstop between protesters and the people finally taking back their own country and the regime ruling, even though there's not much of a regime left. Anyway, so while we're doing this rescue, here's Yingst talking about what we were doing with the IRGC, and there might not be an IRGC, at least leadership at this point. Cut number 3, go.
Yeah, Harris, good morning. High-ranking U.S. sources telling Fox News that while that rescue was ongoing over the weekend, that CENTCOM commander Admiral Brad Cooper directed a strike against an IRGC underground headquarters outside of the Iranian capital of Tehran. Fox News has learned that B-2 bombers were used during this strike, along with massive ordnance penetrators, bunker buster bombs, to target this facility, the same weapons used in Operation Midnight Hammer. And I am told by these high-ranking U.S. sources that the headquarters of the IRGC was obliterated in that strike. Wow. This is significant because it speaks to the intelligence and military excellence of the U.S. military. As this rescue was ongoing, they were hammering the Iranian regime just outside the capital of Tehran with B-2 bombers overhead, U.S. special forces on the ground, more than 100 of them, rescuing that airman and bringing the fight to the IRGC just outside of the Iranian capital. Harris?
Talked about the fact that there were 2 pilots who were rescued very much. What do we know about that part of the mission?
Absolutely. We understand that on Friday, the pilot of the F-15 that was shot down on Thursday night was rescued. And then it wasn't until about 48 hours later that the other rescue took place. And again, Fox News can report that on Saturday morning, the CIA was able to confirm the location and the identity of that airman, to confirm that this was not an Iranian trap, at which point the message was delivered to the Secretary of War, the Joint Chiefs Chairman, and ultimately the President. I'm told at that point, President Trump ordered the operation, and within 12 hours, there were U.S. boots on the ground inside of Iran. Harris?
Trey Yingst, thank you for the...
That is truly remarkable. And yet, when you watch legacy media over this weekend as this was happening, not everybody, but a good chunk, seem to be rooting against this. Because, again, the more casualties, the more chaos, the more it makes Trump look bad, the more Democrats look electable in November. That's really the calculus. That's the only way you could put it. I see The Economist, which used to be somewhat respected, talking about how the U.S. is winning the war but losing the battle. No, that ain't happening. And we could very well see by tomorrow morning, again, President Trump has a deadline of 8 p.m. on Tuesday, saying that unless you open the Strait of Hormuz and unless you come to a deal with us, he's going to really start blowing up stuff like power plants, more bridges. He could obliterate the country anytime he wants. He doesn't want to alienate the civilian population, of course. Right? We could, but no, that's not how you win hearts and minds, certainly. But the Iranians know that they're cooked. And if the IRGC was blown up, obliterated, as Trey Yingst put it, then, I mean, who's left to run the country? So I think this thing is over much sooner rather than later. The market's now up a fourth straight day because of the optimism around this war coming to a close, and more importantly, the Strait of Hormuz being opened again for safe travel, whether it be oil or just shipping in general, a very, very key part of the world when it comes to the world economy. Senator Kennedy, meanwhile, he is Louisiana, of course, Republican, talking about, look, we don't want another Iraq. And Trump is very, very well aware of this, having opposed the Iraq war. Ground troops, no. We're not going to march into Tehran and start, busting up the place. It was a quagmire with Iraq. We know that. We've learned from that. And I don't think ground troops, we could see special forces like we did in this rescue effort. Maybe some troops to secure Karg Island, which is a key oil depot for Iran. But as far as like major U.S. troops that could end up being sitting ducks for IEDs and sniper attacks, no, that ain't happening. Kennedy lays it out here perfectly in cut number 9, go.
We knew we had to destroy all of Iran's air force, its navy, its missiles, its drones, its missile production facilities, its drone production facilities, and the baby steps that it had started to take to gain a nuclear warhead. That was why we went in. We have done that. We either have done it or will be finished doing it in the next few weeks. And I hope the president will say that and say, I've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, and we're coming home. The criticism will be made if the president does what I just said. Well, Iran still has fissile material, enriched uranium. Yeah, it's buried about, 1,000 feet deep under a bunch of rocks, and we'll be able to know if they're trying to dig it out, and we can send in another bomb. And others will say, well, Mr. President, you didn't have regime change. We wanted regime change. It didn't happen. So should we send in 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 troops to try to take over Iran? I've seen that vampire movie before. It doesn't work. It's time to come home, in my opinion.
So you're clearly against boots on the ground. You don't want American soldiers in Iran.
I think we'll be walking into a quagmire. And once we get in, it will never get out. That's what I'm worried about. I don't have the intelligence the president has, but when I lie down to sleep at night these days and I can't, that's one of the things I'm worried about.
And I don't think that's going to happen in any way, shape, or form. I think Kennedy driving that point home with Stephen A. Smith, but in the end, we ain't doing that. We're not that dumb to do that. We don't have to do that as far as 150,000 ground troops going in. Meanwhile, NATO's been swell, haven't they? Boy, good to see they have our backs. It's funny, we always hear about Article 5, and if Russia were to walk into Poland, for example, or any NATO nation, then we automatically would have to go send U.S. troops to defend them. And I'm not, picking on Poland because they've been a great ally of ours, but all these other countries where we've saved their ass more times than France, especially. And in this case, all we're asking for is, hey, help us open the Strait of Hormuz because this affects your shipping and trade as well, affects your economy as well. We can't do everything for you. Fight every battle for you. Save you every time you're attacked, like France. Britain has been no better either. Keir Starmer, the president today, in Trump, compared to Neville Chamberlain. So, he's got that going for him, which is nice. But here is the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, future U.S. president one day, talking about how this really is a one-way street with NATO. Now, isn't it? This is cut number 10. Go.
And I've been a big supporter of NATO. And one of the reasons why I've been a supporter of NATO is because I believe that these basing rights give us leverage and give us flexibility and operational capability all over the world. But if NATO is just about us defending Europe if they're attacked, but them denying us basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. That's a hard one to stay engaged in and say this is good for the United States. So all of them's going to have to be re-examined. All of it's going to have to be re-examined.
Re-examined, as in maybe this thing isn't so, effective anymore. If we're going to do all the work, we pay most of the money, and then they sit back and just, when they need us, great. When we need them, not so much. I think more and more Americans are probably saying, all right, this is an antiquated model. And by the way, before you say, well, we have to guard against Russia, please. All right. It's like watching the National Guard of Canada, right? Trying to execute from a military perspective because they went into, think about this, Ukraine 4 years ago, and they are stuck. They've been stuck for 4 years, despite throwing more and more men at the problem, losing 5 times as many people as the Ukrainians, and yet can't get to Kyiv, the capital. Can't get to any major city. They're stuck in the Donbass, which is, the eastern part of the country. And you never hear any reporting out of Ukraine anymore. You ever notice that? Not that we really had any in the first place. What is going on over there? Just a stalemate? People just killing each other back and forth? Because Russia ain't moving, and Ukraine ain't moving Russia out. So I don't want to hear about how Russia could march through Europe if we disband NATO, because they clearly don't have the ability to even get, more than 50 miles into Ukraine. Just saying. Anyway, you got to hear this. Chris Murphy, the wonderful, good Lord, senator of Connecticut, saying that now Donald Trump needs to be removed from office under the 25th Amendment, which I won't go into the technical parts of it, but basically says, yeah, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. You have no business from a mental perspective being the commander-in-chief of our armed forces and the president of the United States. The same Chris Murphy who said this about Joe Biden when this is 2024, when we all knew that his brain turned to mashed potatoes. But here was Murphy, the expert on the 25th Amendment, talking about Sleepy Joe. Cut number 11, go.
Listen, I'm somebody that's worked intimately with the president, right? So I know that he is ready for this campaign. I have seen how effective he has been up close and personal. Joe Biden is incredibly competent and he's incredibly effective.
So yeah, let's listen to that guy. Unbelievable. And then Chris Murphy wants to be Speaker of the House. Or, I'm sorry, he wants to be the majority leader in the Senate. He's so small, he reminds me of a congressman, but apparently he's a senator from Connecticut. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is Concha at Night. Back with so much more, including more U2, who I've seen 4 times in concert, more than anybody else, as far as bands are concerned. And Kevin's going to play some more modern U2, I swear, when we come back. Right, Kev? Back with more in a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Now we talking. Uno. Trace. Catorce. They just jump right to, what's Catorce again? 14?
14.
Yeah. All right. I kind of like it, though. Catorce is a cool thing. Quince is also good, which is 15. I'm Spanish. I know this stuff. Anyway. That is 2001 U2, I believe. But they were all over the place. Like, you know, we heard Sunday Bloody Sunday. They were all about, obviously, what was going on in Northern Ireland and war, very serious stuff. And then they just went to the fun stuff, like the 90s and 2000. So, again, the staying power when you're a band that has existed for 45 years and you could still go to MetLife Stadium and sell out 80,000 seats before even thinking about it. There you go. I know some of you hate Bono. It's a little political, but again, this is the deal. This is the hand that you have been dealt. If you like the music, just ignore the other stuff, and you'll be just fine. I think Sinatra was a Democrat at one point, and then got really pissed off about, I guess, the Kennedys and Marilyn Monroe. Boy, that was a girl who she was very attractive, apparently, to a lot of men. Right, DiMaggio, Miller, right, the author, and then who else? Obviously, JFK, maybe RFK, Sinatra, DiMaggio. Yeah, to be Norma Jean. You had a very active dance card. We'll put it that way. Speaking of somebody who, well, will never be compared to Marilyn Monroe, and that is Kamala Harris, of course. There are too many clips where she does not quite sound coherent, where there is a lisp in her voice that tells me maybe a little too much of the Chardonnay, of the Sauvignon Blanc, of the box wine, of whatever you want to fill in the blank with. But again, here's totally sober Kamala Harris at some conference somewhere talking about how Trump's got to go, and just listen to the voice, and you tell me if this is somebody who didn't get some liquid courage before they went on stage. Let's put it that way. This is cut number whatever. Go.
We need a new commander-in-chief, and we need a new president, because dude gotta go.
All right. Kev, can we play that one more time real quick? Play that real quick.
We need a new commander-in-chief, and we need a new president, because dude gotta go.
Dude gotta go. This person could be the 48th president. I don't have my money on it, but it could happen. Anyway. It is Vertigo. It is U2. I'm getting vertigo after listening to that soundbite. We're back with so much more on Concha Night in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Oh, here we go. From the great year of 1988. Yeah, good stuff there from Bono and U2 as we continue on this Monday night. Desire somehow stretches a two-syllable word into a 10-second bite, which is pretty good stuff. Anyway, we're going to fade out there slowly. And I got into a bit of a tiff with Ro Khanna. Who's Ro Khanna? He is a congressman from California who may run for president. And I have praised him on Fox News on the air in the past. The reason why I have is because he goes on Fox News. And I thought he was a centrist, but now, since he wants to run for president, he's realizing that you cannot get to the nomination unless you run as a far leftist. And then after you get the nomination, pivot back to pretending you're a moderate. That's the way it's going to work with Newsom, AOC, Buttigieg, Fred Flintstone, J.B. Pritzker, whatever you want to call him. Right? That's the way it's going to work. Kamala Harris as well. She tried that. That worked out well. So the situation is that there's this guy named Hassan Piker, all right? this guy is a profound anti-Semite who represents a growing wing of the Democratic Party, especially the young Democratic Party. And the fact that this guy, given what he has said, not like, 20 years ago, recently, all right, let me give you a little taste of this. And why he's important, by the way, is because on an app called Twitch, he has 2.8 million followers. All right. So therefore, Democrats are like, he's like the Joe Rogan of the left. Yeah, but Joe Rogan didn't say, for example, that Jews are inbreds. That's a quote. Let's see. Hassan Piker. America deserved 9/11. Let's see. Also said, Hassan Piker, it doesn't matter if rapes occurred during the October 7th, 2023 attacks in Israel. Let's see. He has called his critics, and I'm quoting here, let's see, rabid, ultra-Zionist pigs, unquote, and also called on Republicans to kill Rick Scott. And oh, by the way, America deserved 9/11. So now some Democratic influencers are saying, maybe we should go on this guy's show more because he's pretty popular with the far left. And if we want to win elections, we really should go on his show. Throw your integrity aside, where you would never give somebody like this the kind of platform that if you're a Ro Khanna, who's not a big deal, but again, the more Democrats that go on there, the more this show grows. It becomes part of the mainstream. A guy like this, just like Nick Fuentes on the right, who is profoundly, again, like a Hassan Piker on the left, you don't need to appeal to the extremists in order to gain votes. Just don't do it. There's no point, right? If you have integrity, you don't do that. So right, left doesn't matter. And here we are in a situation where Ro Khanna, congressman, California, wants to be president or governor of California, who knows, who cares, is saying that we have to go on these shows more and embrace these sort of perspectives. Embrace them. Oh, okay. Because at last check, when you call Jews inbreds and you said America deserved 9/11, you deserve zero attention. And this guy more and more is gaining it. No question about it. But here is Ro Khanna on Meet the Press. Again, this is how it works. So Ro Khanna, out of 500 and something Congress people, he's on a national television show on a Sunday morning. He gets the platform because he went on Piker's show. Therefore, that makes him interesting in the eyes of legacy media. And this is why he went on Hassan Piker's show, Zohran Mamdani's BFF. And this is just a whole bowl of wrong in terms of the reason why. Cut number one, go.
Who's been quite outspoken. You have made several appearances on a show hosted by socialist commentator Hassan Piker. Some of your fellow Democrats, though, have raised alarms about his views. Here are two members of a left-leaning think tank. This is how they put it. They wrote, quote, no left-wing agitator is more influential and extreme than Twitch streamer Hassan Piker. He's referred to ultra-Orthodox Jews as inbred, employed anti-Semitic dog whistles, bloodthirsty, violent pig dog against an anti-Hamas viewer of his stream, compared liberal Zionists to liberal Nazis, and said Hamas is 1,000 times better than the Israeli state. Now, Hassan Piker says some of his comments have been taken out of context, but he largely stands by them. Do you have any regrets about appearing on his show?
None, and I would go again. But I, of course, condemn those comments. I mean, I've described Hamas as a terrorist state, and we need to unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism.
Would you go on that show again? Of course I would. Happily. I'd do it again. Of course I condemn those comments. Well, when you condemn them, why would you ever sit down with somebody like that? Unless you want the votes. Unless you want to appeal to the anti-Semitic wing, which is growing in the Democrat Party. We saw it. Why do you think Josh Shapiro, popular governor, Pennsylvania, purple state, is at 62% approval going into that election? Absolutely should have been a vice presidential pick of Kamala Harris. She didn't pick him because in her book, she said it was just too darn Jewish. And I did not want to alienate those on the left, particularly in Dearborn, Michigan, very, very key state. And if I don't pick Josh Shapiro, then therefore maybe I could win. At what cost? At what cost? When somebody who is as anti-Semitic as a Hassan Piker is that what it takes? Means to an end? That is a whole bowl of wrong. That certainly I do know. Meanwhile, you got to hear this, because this is really something. John Fetterman, who is the voice of reason within the Democratic Party from the aforementioned state of Pennsylvania, is now slamming his fellow party, what do I call them, cohorts, colleagues, for going on a show like Piker's. And again, he is the lone person who is coming out and saying, don't do this. Every other Democrat is either silent or they're running to Hassan Piker saying, yay, more votes. Cut number 14, go.
It's crazy. I mean, my God, you have many of my parties, they're proud to do events with like that Hassan Piker. This is the individual that just recently said that America deserved 9/11 and that they said that Hamas is 1,000% better than Israel, and he doesn't care about the rapes and cause Jews inbred and say these outlandish things. And then like people like the New York Times give these glowing kinds of profile. They don't mention any of that.
Yeah, you should read the New York Times profile sometime, where they literally describe Hassan Piker as a very handsome young man. Well, I really don't care what he looks like. I care about what he says and what he believes. And this is somebody profoundly anti-Jewish, anti-American, anti-Israel. Again, if you think that America deserved 9/11, where nearly 3,000 people died in some of the worst possible ways you could possibly imagine, sorry, you don't deserve any sort of credence in the public square of conversation. Meanwhile, over the weekend, George Stephanopoulos and Nancy Pelosi are already trying to say that, I guess, Republicans will steal the elections in November. And on what evidence, I'm not quite sure. But all I know is that it used to be that if you said that elections could be stolen and the votes could be manipulated, then you are a threat to democracy. But things are changing now because, well, Democrats are saying it. This is cut number 15. Go. Thanks.
Have honest voting in our country. President Trump signing an executive order to limit mail-in voting, his latest move to subvert the midterm, sowed doubt about the results as his party faces political headwinds. We're going to speak to two Republican election experts.
Subvert the midterms. Okay. That's interesting. Because in California, literally, there is a local councilman in Lodi County, California, that had 71 ballots going out of his home to vote of people we don't know who they are or why they're voting from his house unless it is illegal. I'm sorry. This happens more than people realize. And these are the people that we're catching. Could you imagine the people that we're not catching at this point? So that's what George Stephanopoulos, who, again, is the chief ABC News anchor over at ABC News. This guy was a pit bull for Bill Clinton. All those years. He obviously may take a side here. And we're supposed to respect a clown like that. That also is a whole bowl of wrong. Meanwhile, you got to hear this. Megan Rapinoe was a profoundly horrible human being. All right, so this person was on the women's U.S. soccer team, won a World Cup, blew another World Cup when she missed, again, when you take these shots in overtime, when you're doing the shootout, right, you're not far from the goal. She fired this thing a good 40 feet above the goal and helped the U.S. lose to Sweden back in 2023. She's retired now, but boy, she's really, really for biological men playing against biological women in sports. It even says that even if there's a test that shows that your chromosome says that you're a guy, therefore you're a guy, shouldn't compete against girls. Well, she still says, screw it, let's do it anyway. This is Rapinoe in cut number 4. Go.
The protection of the female bracketed women's category. They're limiting people eligible to compete in the women's category to those who qualify as what they're calling, quote unquote, biological females. This will require a once-in-a-lifetime screening of all women's athletes for the SRY gene. And if an athlete tests positive for this gene, they will have to compete in the male category.
Yeah, they will. Because when they test positive for the gene, therefore, they're dudes. They are guys. Did you see what happened in Paris during the Olympics? Where that poor woman, Italian boxer, never lost a match in her life. Got beaten to the point where she had to quit. Because she was fighting against a guy pretending to be a girl. I'm sorry. Again, 85-15 kind of stuff. 85% of Americans support men not playing against women in sports. 15%, like Megan Rapinoe, are out there in the most pious ways possible saying, no, actually, this should happen. Meanwhile, Republicans, you say, they're going to get absolutely eviscerated during the November elections, midterms. Well, the polling seems to be going in a different direction. And on all places, CNN, here is Harry Enton, who is their main pollster over there, a demonstrative kind of guy, but I kind of like him on some level. Here he is talking about how, compared to 2018 and compared to other elections in the past, Republicans are in a pretty good position, despite what you may hear from legacy media. He doesn't say that part, but I'm saying it. Cut number 6, go.
Look at this. Net favorability. Party ahead at this point. Midterm years with the GOP president. In 2018, Dems were up by 12. In 2006 on net favorability, which party you like more? Dems are ahead by 18. Republicans are actually ahead on net favorability at this point by 5 points. So Democrats are just simply put running behind their previous benchmarks, and they need to be running well ahead of them if they want to take back the United States Senate, given that math.
To be clear, both parties are wildly unfavorable right now. However,
Democrats are even more unpopular than Republicans.
Some of these charts,
as they should be. So I think the way it plays out is Democrats take back the House because they only have to win 4 seats. And history tells us that's going to happen. The Senate, I don't see that happening. So if you have that check and balance, then despite them winning back the House, Democrats, they can't really do anything in any meaningful way outside of performance art. Oh boy, here we go. Desire. This is Joe Concha. This is Concha at Night. We wrap this puppy up in just a moment.
In the year of election, our sister, I can't let you go. Like a preacher stealing hearts at a traveling show. Full of money, and people getting higher.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Tap the banner to learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number, 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number, save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Oh, there it is. And the live version to the left. This is from Paris. The City of Blinding Lights, of course. The song is about Paris, where I was, let's see, in September of last year. All right, you're going to say you're soft, Joe. You're weak. I love Paris. It's my favorite city. I love Chicago. Chicago went downhill. Here we go. Oh boy, I can listen to this all night. But you guys want to hear content, I understand. So we'll tone down the edge here on the guitar and wrap this puppy up. So, Zohran Mamdani released his racial equity plan, which, isn't racist or anything, because he's talking about how, black and brown people deserve more of the city budget than your average other person. The Asians, every time here, never get any mention whatsoever. Like, totally getting screwed. Or, white people. But, Mamdani is all about symbolism and checking off boxes. Here is the new racial equity plan, and it sounds just as much Marxist as you would possibly imagine. Cut number 5, go.
And while today's true cost of living measure confirms that the affordability crisis touches every corner of our city, we know that these effects are not applied evenly. So often, it is black and brown New Yorkers who are hit the hardest. This preliminary racial equity plan is the first step in developing a whole-of-government approach to tackling that reality. It is a plan that lays out these first steps to solve decades of neglect and discrimination, and it places the work of 45 city agencies within a singular framework.
No, just no. 9 words, right, from Ronald Reagan from way back when. Let's see. I'm here from the government, ellipsis, and I am here to help. That might be 8 words. The point is that the government can't lift people up out of whatever situation that they're in. Ultimately, it takes the individual to do that. And the fact that this guy got elected with 51% of the vote, and now it's like, all right, the racial equity plan. When you don't have the money to spend on this sort of thing, given the budget shortfall that we already have here in New York City. Oh, man. I mean, and by the way, so only black and brown people benefit from this? That is positively racist. Meanwhile, here's Jessica Tisch, who, again, Jessica, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you work under Zohran Mamdani. But here she is explaining how many hate crimes are against a certain part of the population here. And it is disturbing. While Mamdani sits there looking like he's in a hostage video during this. This is cut number 2, Kevin. Cut number 2, go.
Now switching to hate crimes. Confirmed hate crimes increased nearly 12% this quarter citywide. We continue to see that the vast majority of our hate crimes are anti-Semitic in nature. In fact, in the first quarter of 2026, more than half of all confirmed hate crimes, or 55%, were anti-Semitic, despite Jews only making up approximately 10% of the population of New York City. These cases are investigated by the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force, which determines whether an incident meets the legal standard for a hate crime under New York state law. As of today, and for the first time, our monthly hate crime data will include 2 clear, accurate sets of numbers. Reported hate crimes, those flagged for investigation by the task force, and confirmed hate crimes as determined by the task force. That is the gold standard for reporting on hate crimes, and that is what we are going to do going forward.
God, please. Just have Jessica Tisch run for mayor. I'd so much rather have her in a position of power, given that this is a common sense person who is as serious as a heart attack when it comes to what needs to be done to run the city. All right, the City of Blinding Lights, U2, takes us out. This is Joe Concha. We're back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time here on WABC and on stations around the country and heard throughout the world. Until then, I got 2 words for you. Bye-bye.
Not just for the ones who kneel.